Welcome, everyone. Our first Sunday service on beauty begins now with an example of musical beauty, a piece originally by Handel, which inspired Danish composer Johan Halvorsen to write this version. Please let yourselves listen meditatively as Diedrich Edholm plays Passacaglia. Good morning. Welcome to this Unitarian Universalist Coastside Community Sunday service. I'm Bill Hevlin, and along with Dave Rakowski here, we are your worship associates today. And a very warm welcome to those visiting us for the first time and to our friends joining us over Zoom. However you describe yourself, whomever you love, whatever your abilities, age, and paths traveled so far, you are most welcome here. Each of you presenting an intrinsically beautiful miracle in our midst. Here we honor that personal flame that helps you to blossom spiritually, build community, work for social justice, and repair the world. After all, what good is a church if it does not make you a better person? Today, we warmly welcome back Tom Devine to the UUCC pulpit with a sermon entitled, "You Could Make This Place Beautiful, Owing Beauty to the World." And now, Dave lights our chalice.
The chalice lighting is a ritual that unites us all as Unitarian Universalists. Even for us non-pyromaniacs, the flame has a certain beauty. It wavers back and forth, it flickers up and down. If you focus on it, it can be mesmerizing and maybe even mystical. But today you're going to have to use a lot of imagination because of fire regulations to get the same beauty out of a battery globe. Our chalice lighting words today come from the Reverend Amy Zucker Morgenstern, minister at the UU Church in Palo Alto. Please join me in reading Within the Heart of the Flower. Within the heart of the flower, the fountain of beauty. Within the heart of the community, a fire that burns and dances. Within the heart of each of us, a spark of the spirit of life. Holy, holy, holy.
Now, for our opening hymn this morning, it is "Wake Now My Senses," number 298. This song reminds us that we are called to a dance with mystery, that with as much gravitas as our call requires, it also requires us to respond to that call with a light and loving heart. So please now rise in body and or spirit and join us in singing "Wake Now My Senses." Verses 1, 2, 3, and 5. These will be led by Tom Devine and accompanied by Vera Vanderschalk on guitar. And the words are in your order of service.
Wake now my senses and hear the earth call. Feel the deep power of being in all. Keep with the web of creation your vow, giving, receiving, as love shows us how. Wake now my reason, reach out to the new. Join with each pilgrim who quests for the true. Honor the beauty and wisdom of time. Suffer thy limit and praise the sublime. Wake now, compassion, give heed to the cry. Voices of suffering fill the wide sky. Take as your neighbor both stranger and friend, praying and striving their hardship to end. Wait a second, let's start again. Wake now my vision of ministry clear. Brighten my pathway with radiance here.
Thank you, Tom. And now it is my great pleasure to introduce you. And Tom was UUCC's most excellent music director from November 2019 to January 2022. Like everyone, he's always loved beauty in its many forms. And music and poetry are the forms that most move him. He earned a BA in English from Yale University and an MA in English Literature from Stanford, all while studying music in his spare time. While working various technical writing positions at Apple Computer and beyond, he's continued to explore music, poetry, and spirituality. Tom sings with various local choirs, including Mirth Tones and the Coastside Pride Chorus, conducting occasionally and playing piano for friends. He enjoys cooking, gardening, walking in the coastside's beautiful outdoors, and sharing good food, drink, music, conversation, poetry, and friendship. He's grateful for the chances he's been given to appreciate and share beauty, the beauty of living in this world. And we are most grateful to what he has to say to us on this topic. Tom.
Thank you, Bill. So, I want to start this morning by reading a poem. And it's by Maggie Smith, not the actress. This is a young American poet. And this poem is called Good Bones. Life is short, though I keep this from my children. Life is short, and I've shortened mine in 1,000 delicious, ill-advised ways. 1,000 deliciously ill-advised ways I'll keep from my children. The world is at least 50% terrible, and that's a conservative estimate, though I keep this from my children. For every bird, there is a stone thrown at a bird. For every loved child, a child broken, bagged, sunk in a lake. Life is short, and the world is at least half terrible. And for every kind of stranger, there is one who would break you, though I keep this from my children. I am trying to sell them the world. Any decent realtor walking you through a real shithole chirps on about good bones. This place could be beautiful, right? You could make this place beautiful. Well, when I first read this poem, it blew me away, as it did many readers. It was written sometime before 2016, when it was published, but it went viral that year after the Pulse nightclub shooting, and then came after the 2016 election. The poem is witty, its irony is delicious, and those last lines are a real zinger. It's a pleasure to read for all those reasons. And I thought it would make a good anchor for a sermon about beauty, this month's theme. But the more I lived with that poem, the more I realized how deep a chord of despair it sounds. One that resonates in many people, apparently, including me. And I began to get discouraged. The speaker of the poem jokes about the deliciously ill-advised ways she has shortened her life. She's talking about the many toxic ways that we use to numb ourselves against the ugliness of the world. Ways that she'll keep, she says, from her children
just as she'll try to hide from them the horrors that she sees around her, as if she could. You could make this place beautiful. Indeed, if she's right about the world, then that's a pretty desperate need, an urgent moral imperative to do something about it, to make this place beautiful. But her hope for selling the world to her children is deeply colored by despair. And when I thought about the problems of the world in that way, I fell into a kind of despair myself. I began to despair of saying anything about beauty that would be of any use to you, to us. How could a sermon about beauty, how could beauty itself possibly be of any use in a world where school children are gunned down on a regular basis, where bombs are going off in the middle of Europe, and 1,000 other horrors, great and small, are happening every day? Well, when I got to that point of despair, repeatedly as I struggled with writing this, I would usually do one of two things. I'd either go to the piano and start playing, or I'd open my door and walk outside into my garden. What I call my garden consists of a few pots of herbs, thyme, parsley, oregano, chives, mint, and a few trees in the tiny space that borders my mobile home, plus the birds and insects that come to visit. It's not much, but it's enough. Just being outside in nature, seeing a hummingbird hover a foot from my face, apparently looking at me, as happened once a few months ago, or a robin sitting on the fence under my neighbor's apple trees, or just seeing the green plants themselves growing. Nothing special. Just being there feels like a blessing, one that's always available. Wake now my senses, indeed. It gets me outside myself, outside the anxieties of being human, the anxiety of dwelling in a world that's at least 50% terrible, and the anxiety of fearing that I won't be able to do anything about it. And somehow both of those things, both of those kinds of beauty, the beauty of music and the beauty of nature, helped me to relax and get back to the task. The poet John Keats wrote that a thing of beauty gives us a quiet bower, a place to relax. And to sleep, he says, full of sweet dreams and peace and quiet breathing. That's something like how we feel when we feel loved, isn't it? I think there's a definite connection between beauty and love, and I'll return to that point later. But first, I want to look a little more into despair, specifically my despair. I feel despair when I take on tasks that are too big for me. The world being 50% terrible or more, or writing a sermon about beauty. Well, I'm not a philosopher, but I've read a few philosophers. One of them, the 19th century Danish philosopher Søren Kierkegaard, wrote a whole book about despair. It's called The Sickness Unto Death. He basically tells us that despair consists in being paralyzed by ego, worrying about ourselves. Am I good enough? Am I beautiful? Or even, am I saved? Egotism is a kind of labyrinth, a fun house, hall of distorting mirrors. We get lost there, bouncing back and forth between feeling beautiful and feeling ugly, between pride and shame, the two sides of the coin of ego. When you're lost in that labyrinth, Kierkegaard says, the only way out is to take a leap. He calls it a leap of faith. And that faith is the recognition that you're not in this alone. You're part of something bigger than yourself. Creation, or a community. And when you feel the truth of that, when you feel that connection to something larger than yourself, or even if you don't feel it, but you're willing to take that leap blindly, then you're freed up to act in the full knowledge that your actions may have only a limited effect. You don't know. After all, you're not the creator. You're a creature. Get it? So what this tells me is that when I feel overwhelmed, when I feel that kind of despair by looking at the world and looking at the news, which happens every day, it's probably because I'm trying to take on too big a task all at once. Trying to define beauty once and for all, or trying to figure out how to save the world all at once. And I think these days many of us may feel that kind of despair. Every time I turn on the news, I begin to feel helpless against the level of ugliness that I see in the world. That's after I rant and rave about it. But the way out of despair, as Kierkegaard might say, and even if he didn't, I would, is to look for some small, concrete way to make a difference in your own little part of the world. Something as simple as inviting a neighbor to dinner, visiting a sick friend, writing a letter to a newspaper or a congressperson, spending a few hours a week tutoring a child, or working with ALAS or Abundant Grace or any of the other wonderful organizations in town. Even a simple act of love, a smile, a kind word, a bit of praise is something you can do here and now that makes this place more beautiful. And that's maybe the highest kind of beauty, moral beauty. So I had to throw away the end of what I'd written today. So I beg your indulgence as I get my computer up and read what came to me this morning in the shower as a better ending. So I think there's a paradox of scale going on here. When I look at the news, a picture of the whole world's problems, I get paralyzed and depressed. But when I look around me with my own eyes, at the world that's right here in front of my face, well, that's not so bad, is it? When I read the statistics about school dropouts and educational budgets, I feel pretty depressed. But when I tutor my student Leo at Moonridge, I come away happy and encouraged. I can see he's learning, and we've both had fun. And I think of that song, Bread and Roses, which came out of the women's suffrage movement and the Chicago, textile strike, I think, of 1911. Give us bread, but give us roses too. We have to give bread where it's needed. That's first, no question. But when I give bread, which is our interesting metaphor for money, when I give that online, I don't feel much satisfaction, frankly. I feel more annoyed at the problems of the world and at having to grumble, give of my own limited cash to help solve them. I don't get much satisfaction from that. Well, there's a little. But think of giving someone a rose. Now, I don't mean giving a rose to a homeless person instead of the money they need or the bread they need. That'd be some picture, right? some new agey do-gooder trying to cheer up a homeless guy by giving him a flower he can't eat. But what does it mean to give a rose? We give roses as a sign of love, which is what keeps florists in business, especially on Valentine's Day. When we give somebody a rose or any other thing of beauty, we're expressing love, and we're recognizing that there's a real person inside that body. A heart and a soul, if you'll let me use that term, that our heart wants to connect with. And that's powerful food. As the song says, hearts starve as well as bodies. Give us bread, but give us roses too. Cardinal Newman's motto was cor ad cor loquitur. Heart speaks to heart. I think it's in the personal connections we make that we're most likely to create that highest kind of beauty, the moral beauty, the connection, and most likely to help make this place, this world, beautiful. So, in a moment, I'm going to ask you to complete my sermon by adding your experiences of beauty or despair or ways out of despair. But first, Bill is going to ring a gong, and we'll sit in silence for just a minute. All right? So, Bill? Thank you. So, one of the things I most enjoyed about our Zoom-only services during the pandemic were the discussions after the service. And I wanted that kind of in-person discussion in our person-to-person, real-life services as well. In that I'd been inspired by this church I used to go to in San Francisco called St. Gregory of Nyssa Episcopal. And there the sermon always ends with these words. We complete the sermon by sharing our experiences. If the readings or hymns or sermon brought any experiences of yours to mind, please feel free to share them now. So if you have any personal experiences of beauty or self-doubt or emerging from despair that you'd like to share, please raise your hand. Thank you. Just a moment. I'll get back to you. Please raise your hand and I will call on you. There are not too many rules, just one. Please talk about experiences rather than opinions or ideas. And please be mindful of the time. We'll take about, I think, 10 minutes for this if there's that much discussion. And of course, please don't criticize anyone else's sharing. So, and this portion of the service, like Joys and Concerns, will be edited out of YouTube so you don't have to worry about it being online. Now we get to take another beauty break by listening, well, it's not a break, it's been beautiful right now. But we're going to listen to Diedrich play another piece, a beautiful piece by a composer named Yeruma. And this is called The River Flows in You.
Thank you, Diedrich. That was so incredibly beautiful. Vera has selected this beautiful arrangement of La Vie en Rose by Pierre Langui.
Beautiful, thank you, Vera. It's time to extinguish. Okay. Please join me in the reading. It's entitled Carry the Flame, and it's by the Reverend Brian Kyler. The chalice is now extinguished, but its light lives on in the minds and hearts and souls of each one of you. Carry that flame with you as you leave this place, and share it with those you know, with those you love, and most especially with those you have yet to meet. And now we have our closing hymn, Guided by Time.
And played by Diedrich. Our closing hymn this morning is Let All the Beauty We Have Known. It's number 326 in the UUCC Silver Hymnal. So please rise in body or spirit as you're able. And let's create some beauty together as we sing Let All the Beauty We Have Known. The words are in your order of service, and Diederik will play the melody once through completely before we sing the first verse. Let all the beauty we have known illuminate our hearts and minds. Rejoice in wonders daily shown, in faith and joy and love that binds. We celebrate with singing hearts the loveliness of sky and earth, the inspiration of the arts, the miracle of every birth. Life's music